this government is sort of it's doing things differently the way it hasn't been done in the past. It's forward-looking. It's modern. It even has a minister in charge now of information technology, and all of that must no doubt be helpful in sort of engaging in a sort of an important foundational way on this particular project. I think there's also this whole matter about it being mutually beneficial. Maybe I could bring in Mark again here because he's the External Relations Director at Inventorium. The mutually beneficial part to it, we've just heard how this can actually, how education can be an exportable service to increase GDP. About the mutually beneficial aspect to it, it's like Australia or whatever the correspondent country is would also be benefiting. It's a two-way kind of a thing. Can you speak a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even what we're talking about with the model that we discussed beforehand, the idea is for, in this case, Nigerian students to be able to go to Australia with a mentor and actually be able to get employability skills. And if you think about transnational education, the real outcome is that you want yourself or your child or your partner become globally employable. And that's what we're doing with the program that we've discussed. That benefits Australia. But the idea is that all of those, vast majority of those students will come back to Nigeria and then set up business with the skills that they've learnt while they've been studying and working in Australia. I myself have lived and worked in many different countries. I studied at an Italian university. I worked at a Chinese university where actually one of the first people I met was from a man from Nigeria, this was 25 years ago, who was studying medicine. And I think Matthias is actually a very good example of someone that leaves their home country, wherever that might be, studies, learns a different culture. Obviously English wasn't a challenge, but often people have to learn another language. That benefits economically, culturally, in a societal sense, the receiving country. But again, someone like Matthias, who spends 6 months in Australia, 6 months in Nigeria, but then contribute to the Nigerian economy by setting up businesses, giving jobs to people, enabling that real mobility of talent. I think Nigeria is perfectly set up, not just in an African continental sense, but in a global sense, because of your high quality of education, because of the value for money aspect of the lifestyle here as the world becomes a lot more expensive, in terms of the quality of your faculty and the potential.
I beg your pardon, Mark, could I butt in here? We have a caller, one of the people I expected to call in on the program, Mazi Okoroafo, calling in from Arochukwu. Education is definitely a thing with Mazi Okoroafo. Good morning to you, Mazi Okoroafo.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, I guess. Yeah, when we talk about education, is paramount important in the whole world, not only Nigeria or in Arochukwu State. Now, let me give you two quotes. Like Nelson Mandela, I quote and unquote, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. Unquote. And B.B. King said, I quote and unquote, the beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you. Which means you can take a horse to the stream, you cannot force that horse to do what? To drink water. You see, when we talk about education, it's very, very important. Paramount important. That this is the key thing that will lead the GDP to any level in this country. One, if the monotechnics, polytechnics, college of education, universities, whether private, whether state, or federal, will sit down, make use of that the manpower they have there. They will generate any type of form. Look at the just restaurant. Look at this guest house. Look at the program you run. Look at pure water or swan water or table water. Any type of water we talk, they can do that one. But the thing is this: are we ready to do it? Which the government have told us that they are ready to do it. But the thing is that the program we are facing today now about the people talk about school fees. Well, I would just advise the federal government, any university should not charge more than 70,000 or 60,000 in any university. That's my own suggestion to the federal government. Now, if you come to school, when they say maybe you are doing, no matter the program you are doing, you must do an entrepreneurial course. That by the time you finish, whether you are a lawyer or a medical doctor, anything like you have a skill matched together with the profession you have already acquired. That is the course of study in this university or polytechnic or military. That's when you are, and you are also yielding revenue to the state. Not only the state, your local government and where you are coming from. For a question of,
I think we lost Mazi Okoroa for there, but Matthias, could I ask you to pick up on, what Mazi Okoroa was commenting upon there? He actually, as you heard, he also said something about the cost of education.
Yes, the cost of education, as I've mentioned earlier on, it's increasing daily, according to CPI. At the same time, the government is also looking for alternatives to make education affordable and accessible with the introduction of the Education Bank, which the act was recently passed by this present administration. So that is in its own step. It's going to be reducing the cost of accessing education in the long run for Nigerians. And just like we cannot overrule the benefits of going abroad to study, even though it's costly, at the same time, we want to work with the government to have an affordable means of going abroad to study, which is the transnational education model. And the high cost of studying overseas still has its own benefits for the economy. There's a multiplier effect. Diaspora remittance into Nigeria is impaired with our GDP. That tells you there's a huge contribution from the diaspora communities. And most Nigerians going overseas go as students initially. From there, they have the opportunity to work while they study. At the end of their study, they go into full-time employment, and they send in remittances from overseas. These remittances, in turn, create jobs, start new businesses, build properties, build houses, support their families. And this on its own has a massive multiplier effect in the economy. So when looking at the cost of going abroad, I would like the government to find a way to support Nigerians going abroad in large numbers. It's not a bad way. I was speaking with a representative from a state government recently on how they can solve unemployment issues. Sometimes students need to be given the opportunity to go to a third country to upskill. At the same time, they have access to employment. The cost of a government doing a scholarship program to support people to go overseas far outweigh the cost of looking for employment for them in Nigeria. But at the same time, the benefits outweigh that because you'll be earning foreign income. So there's a lot of benefit for the government and also for Nigerians.